I have been spending some time in Headspace trying to figure out what the main theme or deconstruction of Deltarune is. In Undertale, Toby Fox deconstructs the entire concept of an RPG, the leveling system, how we view enemies, all culminating in the broad examination of how players approach morality with choice in narrative-based entertainment. I do not think Deltarune is as heavily focused on this angle, although it is still there. What I do think Deltarune seeks to deconstruct is the very concept of immersion and suspension of disbelief themselves. I wasn't thinking of this until I went back into Chapter 3, which features TV World and the video game that you can jump into to go get the Shadow Mantle if you achieve S rank on the various segments of Tenna's game. In Deltarune and Undertale, in order to have a proper emotional investment in the story that which is playing out, primarily in the meta-narrative aspect, you need to, at least a little bit, buy into two things. First is that, for the perspective of the story, these characters are at least a little bit more real than average video game characters. They are living a life. And two, that you are a functioning part in this world. That when you are playing the game, you are actually narratively taking control of events that are happening. If you do not have this required amount of immersion, you are very likely not to have any concern with the emotional stakes that have to do with it when playing Deltarune. And the reason I think that Toby Fox is intentionally deconstructing this aspect in and of itself, like I said, it was very important in Undertale as well, that you have these fundamental beliefs, is because of the way that they are separating the layers of the worlds. There are 4 of them. First layer of the world is our real world. Hopefully, you have enough of a moral compass and investment in your fellow man that you are not going out and murdering people on the street. I feel like this video's not really for you if you're that far gone. Level 2, now in the video game, is the light world. We are meant to take these characters as being real, for lack of a better term. We are meant to suspend the disbelief that these characters should mean more to us for various reasons, and they actually leverage the fact that Undertale was a very popular game. So we go in already caring about a bunch of these characters as a fan base that very likely played Undertale. I imagine very few people going into Deltarune didn't touch Undertale. It's a very clever trick Toby Fox uses, and I actually think it's very important that so many characters in Deltarune are from Undertale, because it achieves this effect that we already have this feeling about so many of these characters. So, these characters are kind of, in our suspension of disbelief, more real. We should at least feel a little bit bad if it ever comes time to do something horrible to them. Theoretically. Doesn't mean you're an actual bad person if you do something. But that's not what we're talking about. This is still fiction. Level 3 is the Dark World. It is a world formed from the memories of objects in the darkness. The characters of the Light World, though some of them are a little bit stubborn to this fact, perceive the Dark World to be very similar to how we would perceive the average video game. Or perhaps even a better example would be how we are being led to perceive the Light World. In that these characters, while fun and interesting, ultimately are not real, and they do not actually matter. And I've actually seen this discourse seep into how people talk about the Snowgrave route. They say that on the Snowgrave route, the people that you freeze up to Birdley don't count because they're not real. Whereas once you get to Birdley, that's a Lightner, that's real. And I understand that thought process from Noelle's perspective. She thinks this is a dream, this is essentially a video game land. But from our perspective, I think it's very funny that we could ever view the characters in the Dark World and the Light World any different. Going down to level 4, I think you know where this is going, is the video game within the S-rank dressing room in Chapter 3. In this top-down RPG Zelda-style video game, you still see enemies as you do in the rest of the game, but at least in the first instance, they are not remotely hostile. They actually can't hurt you until you get the sword. And the only way to progress and go get the Shadow Mantle is to damage some enemies, and throughout the 3 different sections, eventually you are going to be stabbing the facsimiles of Susie and Ralsei, for which Chris appears to chide you. Am I using that word right? To have it take issue with you. To what degree, we're not sure. We, in at least the first instance, I don't think the game is overly concerned with it after the first time we visit the top-down Zelda RPG world that's hidden in the S-rank room. The first time, I think most players are probably approached it like I did. They approached it doing their darndest to find a pacifistic way to proceed forward, and failed to do so. And such decided to kill the enemies, because these are just video game characters. One of my favorite episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation features the character Mr. Data. Commander Data. Lieutenant Commander Data. Who, his autonomy ends up the matter of a trial, as someone very strongly believes that he is just a machine, and therefore he is Federation property. They can do whatever they want with him. Very good episode. Star Trek: The Next Generation is an outstanding show, and I think everyone who hasn't seen it should check it out, and everyone who has seen it should probably watch it again. That is an amazing episode, and I think it does carry some similarities to how we should probably be approaching the characters in Undertale and Deltarune. But it's actually a follow-up episode to this that I find more interesting. Because we as the viewer, and in fact the people in the Star Trek universe, are inclined to believe that Mr. Data is sentient, that he is he deserves his autonomy. He's clearly a real person, nuts and bolts or not. A future episode poses the same issue again. A machine that is, by all accounts, sentient. But unlike Mr. Data, it's a box. Like, it is the weighted companion cube from Portal. These things have feelings, they have emotions, they're smart, but they cannot communicate with humans or other aliens. They appear, by all visual indication, to simply be drones. And I think that this is the best comparison to the non-speaking video game characters in the fourth layer down that I'm referring to, because we currently have no real reason to believe that their situation is any meaningful way different than the Lightners or the Darkners. Like, from our perspective, it's more video game characters, and even worse, they're more video game characters within a Toby Fox deconstructive narrative game. Why is killing these things okay, but not any of the other characters? And if your reasoning is because a number doesn't go up, there actually is one that's keeping track of it. I don't think it does anything at this point. The number goes up if you do kill the things in the game, but more importantly, the number that goes up when you snowgrave enemies does not rise. The number that goes up when you fight and fail to recruit enemies does not rise in this game. So is our only investment in not killing these enemies that the number that tells us in the game that we're a bad person does not go up? Let's take, for example, if in Undertale you were allowed to kill 5 monsters and still have a pacifist run, it just wouldn't count to the number for whatever nonsense reason. Say they couldn't be boss monsters, it couldn't be that extreme. Wouldn't that be a little bit thematically bizarre to do? That is what the level 4 down, top-down Zelda-style video game sections of Deltarune strike me as. It is an intentional effort to be thematically bizarre, because that is what I think Toby Fox is building to. I suspect that future chapters will have additional things to get us thinking these ways. I believe that he wants us to question why our suspension of disbelief can function such as it does in these games. I do not believe that he's necessarily has an issue with it. It's a suspension of disbelief, immersion, verisimilitude. These are all required factors to enjoy any narrative-based experience. It's not a bad thing that these things exist, but by putting pressure on certain aspects of this, Toby Fox has forced us to consider what they actually mean. I do not know if he's got like a broader final set piece that will really hammer home a bigger point. But I deeply love this angle, because I don't think I've ever played another game or seen a movie that the very nature of immersion is the subject matter. And I kind of think I'm right that this is at least one of the main focuses. I don't think he's just doing the same thing as with Undertale again. The choices don't matter versus the your choices don't matter thing is, of course, interesting, but what is the new angle? Toby Fox, I think you could call Undertale nothing less than a masterpiece, both from game design, art design, but also from thematic and having a point design. I don't know if there's a word for that. I think there is a genuine artistic intent to Undertale. And with these new chapters, one is starting to emerge in Deltarune. I wanted to bring these thoughts into your headspace so that I could talk about it for 15 minutes. Honestly, that's just what I wanted to do. I love this. I've been obsessed with this game. I will see you on another one of these fireside chats. Bye.